Today we're going to take a look at the music production process from start to finish. What's up, my name is Nick from the Future Musician, and today we're going to take a look at the music production process from start to finish. So all the steps involved from writing a song to listening to a finished recording. So basically for me there are two scenarios. I often work with bands or if individual artists. So if a band is coming to the studio, most of the time they already have arranged the whole song and they come to you with an iPhone recording of them playing in their basement, or if they know how to do the studio stuff themselves, they create a demo at the beginning. And if I'm working with an individual artist or songwriter, mostly they come to me with a work tape, just them playing acoustic guitar and singing the song, and that requires a little bit more work in the first phase. So the first thing I always like to start with is pre-production. So we're gonna take a look at the song and see where we can improve it. So most of the times it's like chord structure, different melodies, trying out some different vocal melodies. We always check the lyrics, we check the tempo of the song, we check the key of the song, and for bands we also, if we have done all those things, we create like a little guide track, just a guitar and a scratch vocal for the drummer, so that when we are starting to record drums, they know where in the song they are, where the accents are, and it's just a guide track to start the whole process. If I'm working with just an artist or a songwriter, I also like to create a small demo in the first phase, so we kind of get a feel of where the song is gonna go. So most of the time we just track the guitar part and the vocals they played, and we try to program some drums, add some guitar layers, try to get a feel for the song, so when we are gonna start tracking drums, we know where we want to go with the whole thing. So the next step is to start the recordings. So I always like to start with the drums. We have created the guide track, so it should be fairly easy. The drummer knows where he is in the song and he can drum the whole thing. So if your band has a drummer, he's probably gonna drum it, and if it's for an individual artist, we probably need to hire someone, because I'm not that good of a drummer. And yeah, when the drums are recorded, I always like to edit them first, so that when we start tracking the rest of the instruments, the drums are tight, and yeah, that's gonna speed up the whole recording process, and it's gonna make it a lot more fun. So right after we track the drums, I always like to start filling in some guitars. I always like to do the guitars before the bass, just because when you are doing some cool, like the bass is kind of set in stone because we already know what the kick pattern is. And sometimes when you add guitars and you add guitar layers and you're arranging on the fly, you get some cool harmony ideas. And sometimes it's cool, yeah, to also add some bass harmonies to that. But if you don't have the guitars, yeah, you're just gonna keep your bass real basic, or you're gonna do way too much. And I find that if I do the bass later on in the process, it's more functional, and that's what I like a bass guitar to be in my productions, like a functional instrument. You need to have it, and it needs to be tight, but you don't want it to do too much. So yeah, after we have recorded all the instruments, I always like to do the vocal recordings. I like to do that later on in the process, just so when you're recording the vocals, you kind of have a feel for the song, and I think it's, yeah, way more vibey for a vocalist to sing over a well-produced track than over just a scratch guitar track or something like that. So during the vocal recordings, after the lead vocals are done, I always like to try to create some different harmonies and to do some vocal arranging on the spot. Most of the time the people I'm working with have some ideas for the backing vocals, but it's always a good opportunity to create some cool layers and stack some harmonies, and you can really bring your vocal production to life with adding harmonies. So that's always a fun part, and yeah, you should never skip that one. So when we have recorded the whole band, we start listening to the track and see if there are some gaps we might want to fill, and you can do that with programming stuff. So we can add synths or some extra key layers or extra percussion layers to bring more life into the track. But sometimes you find that you want to record an instrument no one plays. So for me, that's often a fiddle or pedal steel or a cello or stuff like that. So if that's the case, I always try to hire someone to do that. And you already have a feel for the song, so you can send them the song, or they can come over to the studio and we record some extra musical instruments that no one from the band or myself can play. And this is a real cool opportunity to give your music production something extra, so that it's more than just a band. Playing guitars and bass, you can really add pedal steel or cello or a complete string arrangement or something like that. It could be really cool to add that to your production, but it really depends on the song. So now all the recordings are finished. They still need some editing, so I always start with the musical editing. So the bass guitar hits right when the kick drum hits. I always like to, I record the instruments mostly in parts, so we need to create some crossfades and make sure that all the parts flow together, that they are well aligned and that they're well edited, so that there's no strange timing things going on or tuning things. So the next part is the vocal editing and the vocal production, and I always like to put quite some time into this one because it can really make your recording sound professional. So what I always do is when I record vocals, I record multiple takes, and then the first thing is to start comping. So I go over all the takes and I try to make notes like which line I liked in which take, and sometimes it's this word from one take and the other word from another take, and then a whole sentence from that take, but then just the T was better in that take. So I really try to make one master comp of all the vocals we have recorded. This can really make your vocal production sound way more professional. So in this process I also make notes of what the best takes are to create some vocal doubles out of it. So if you want to spread some vocals in your chorus, you have the doubles right underneath all the vocal layers you've recorded. And I also do the same thing for the backing vocals, so for the harmonies. And when I have selected everything, I start editing the lead vocal. So that means creating crossfades so that all the words align well, and that there are that you don't hear the different takes going over into each other. And then I start editing tuning. So then I start tuning the vocals, and I use a combination of Melodyne and a little bit of autotune for that. So I try to Melodyne the vocals in a way that you don't hear that it's tuned, and that you wouldn't even need autotune at the end of the process. But I like to add some autotune just to make it a little bit more polished, but I try to get there 90% in Melodyne. So when I've Melodyned the whole thing and the lead vocal is well tuned, I start editing the timing of the whole vocal. So that means that the vocals, if they are laid back, I try to get them up front a little bit more in timing wise. I start editing the whole lead vocal until I'm completely happy with it. And then I'm gonna edit the backing vocals, and I make sure they align with the lead vocal. So first I tune them, and then I start time editing them. And a cool trick for that is Vocaline. It's a plugin. You can load in your lead vocal, you can load in your backings, and you hit align, and they basically align the whole backing vocal to your lead vocal. So all the S's, all the T's are at the same spot, and also all the words are at the same length, and it's a real time saver for me. It's not always the best thing to do if you want to keep your production and your vocal production a little bit more lively. It's better to do it by hand. But if it needs to be a tight pop vocal, you can use Vocaline to make the vocals sit tight and work well with each other. So now everything is edited. All the tracks are they sound great together, they are well tuned, they groove timing wise. And then it's time to start mixing and make sure that every element we have recorded works well together and that it sounds as one cohesive thing. And most of the time I work with some guides for myself. So I make a Spotify playlist of songs that are kind of in the same genre, and I use them to reference my mix. So I try to create a mix I'm really happy with. I send that to the artist, and then I get if it's a bad day, a list of revisions, and if it's a good day, mostly they have like 3 revision points or something like that. So revisions are a really important part of the process. It's not the most fun thing to do, but the end goal is to make the artist happy, and revisions are just part of the process. So when we have all agreed to the final mix, it's time for mastering. Most of the time I send it to a different mastering engineer, because I always think it's a great idea to let some fresh ears go over the whole production. And mastering, it's not just getting your music up to a certain level, it's also a taste thing. So they add some EQ in a tasteful way, they add some compression, they get it to the right level. So it's more than just leveling, it's also just a different set of ears trying to create a sound that translates well on different platforms and different systems. And I always double check the master just to see if I'm also happy with it. And sometimes I make one revision or something like that, but most of the times it's good at the first try. And then I have contact with the artist, they approve it as well. And if everybody is happy, we have a finished product. And then it's time to deliver it to the aggregators and get your stuff onto Spotify and YouTube and use it to create video clips and stuff like that. So yeah, you have a finished product. So basically that's the whole process of recording a song from start to finish. And if you guys have any questions, please let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And yeah, I will see you in the next video.